What's up guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be sharing something that gave me personally a huge boost in efficiency and productivity when building AI agents and workflows. This is something I truly never go without when starting a new project within N8N, so if you're not already using it, this will give you an insane boost in your capabilities and troubleshooting when building anything within N8N. I'm referring directly to projects set up within Claude and ChatGPT, and these snippets are directly from Anthropic and OpenAI's website, explaining what they are and how to use them effectively. And I'll be linking both these articles in the description below. And in terms of setting one up to 10x your capabilities within N8N, that's what I'll be going over in this video, so let's jump right in. So as you can see, when building workflows, I use these projects religiously for workflow ideas, getting the order of operations down, and specifically troubleshooting and writing code. And in this video, I'll even show you how to take it a full step further to fully replicate workflows just like this one. So if you've watched my past videos, you'll know that this exact workflow is one that I built last week in one of my previous videos, and I'll link that video here. We can go over to YouTube, copy this YouTube link, head back to Claude Desktop, paste that YouTube link in, and say, please recreate this N8N workflow from this video. Use the YouTube MCP to download the transcript. And I'll link the video here to show you how I set up my Claude Desktop YouTube MCP to be able to directly download the transcript of any YouTube video. And we say, give me the JSON code, be able to copy and paste into N8N. And we can even take it a step further and add a screenshot of the workflow to enhance our results. We'll go ahead and send this, and it'll ask us if we want to use the YouTube MCP, which we do, to be able to download that entire transcript, and it'll begin writing all of our JSON code for us. I've also found them to be a huge help when connecting applications via webhook that aren't natively supported within N8N. So anything that needs API calls or HTTP requests, uploading documentation into your project can really enhance how quickly you are able to set up a node and a workflow. So these projects have drastically sped up my debugging process, generating useful code for my code nodes and parsing. And I've found that it's been a lot more useful within N8N, and the code is tailored specifically for N8N purposes as it has all the documentation ready. It has also radically reduced my time spent referencing the N8N documentation. So before we jump right into setting up our projects, I want to give a quick gloss over to how I use these projects. And I typically do use Claude and ChatGPT in tandem. So the Claude project, I typically use this for a lot of the troubleshooting, debugging, and everything that I'm doing whenever I'm within the workflow. So whether it's API connections, specific code nodes, or parsing, I'm typically going to be using the Claude project. And then for the ChatGPT project, I'm going to be using it a lot in the pre-planning and really refining my ideas and getting the order of operations of my workflow down. So jumping directly into Claude Desktop, you can see this is what the inside of my N8N project looks like currently, and you can see on the right, these are all the documents that I've uploaded and the line count and how much space I have. And I actively add and take away documentation based on projects that I'm doing. And I'm going to be adding this full list of documentation to a Google Drive and sharing that with my community. So if you're in the community, you'll have a complete documentation library to add to your own projects. And if you want to join, the link will be down below. So getting into Claude Desktop, you'll see that you'll have a projects tab on your left. And once within that folder, you'll be met with all your current projects. I currently have a you should like and subscribe. And first you'll want to add a new project. So you can add a project with a name and give a description. This will be displayed on the card within your project library. And you can go ahead and create project. And once within your project, your chat logs and chat history will be here. And this is where you can add context to your projects. So here you can see set up project with instructions, and it is optional. And if you hover over it, it says provide Claude with specific instructions and context for all chats in this project. And this is where you can give a system prompt to further help direct this project on how you want it to respond, what kind of narrative you want to give it, and any relevant instructions or information. So I'm going to paste a prompt there, basically just saying you're an expert in N8N workflow, what the goals and required information from the users. You can also add, if you want it to ask follow-up questions and how those can be structured, include code snippets and JSON examples, giving it instructions on the available resources, reference uploaded N8N documentation throughout the conversation, and keeping responses concise and step-by-step guides in a bullet point form. So we can save this. So you see you'll be able to upload from your device, add text content. You can even link a GitHub repo. However, if it is a full project, I will say the context window is not high enough to support a full GitHub project. So you'll need to be specific on which files and folders you're going to choose. So there's multiple types of documents and ways to upload to this library to give your project some context. So if you're setting this up from scratch, I'd highly recommend going into the N8N documentation and copying and pasting relevant information to your workflows or AI agents. N8N's documentation is very dense and very good about explaining and going step by step. So for a very good example would be the glossary tab. You can copy over this entire glossary just to have better access to be able to talking the same language and making sure Claude's understanding what you're saying. And so I'll go ahead and add all my N8N documentation that I think is relevant for workflows. So some of the relevant documentation that I'm going to be adding is Supabase documentation, Zillow API documentation, which I use a lot, MCP documentation that talks about the community node that N8N has access to, how a code node is structured and set up, and examples of the code within it, how AI agents work within the N8N environment, firecrawl documentation, and so I'll just add these one by one. And so now that I have this content library fully loaded with a baseline of documentation within N8N, as you can see, we can click into this documentation. And how I was able to build this and have such a deep documentation note, a good habit to get into to be able to constantly add to this context library. So jumping into N8N, if you click into any node, it will give you the documentation here. And this is literally where I've been adding to my projects to give it a little bit more context as to what I'm working with and how I'm working with it. And so another good example of documentation will be the SQL AI agent node. If you're looking to interact with, have an AI agent specifically for databases, you can just copy and paste. And you can go over here and click add text content, SQL AI agent, and paste it in here and add content. And you can go immediately into Claude and ask the tool explain in short, and it will say, based on the provided documentation, I'll explain how the SQL AI agent works. And so then you can go on how do I connect it, what's the best way to use it, give me workflow ideas on how to implement it, and it makes Claude just 10 times more powerful, or ChatGPT, depending on where you set this up, or if you use them both like I do. It really cuts down on the learning curve of N8N and gives you just that extra step being that much better. So jumping back into N8N to show a real-world hands-on demo of how I use this project daily whenever creating N8N workflows. I think the true magic of using these projects is really whenever you're within the workflows and creating code nodes or having trouble connecting databases or APIs or HTTP requests. So I have a snippet of a workflow from a video from a home service workflow, which I created in a recent video, which I'll link here. But essentially this workflow is getting a new customer from an Airtable database, doing a Zillow API search of the address given by the customer whenever they fill out the form, getting the square footage, and then this calculator is actually empty. So what I want this quote calculator to do is calculate the quote for this lawn care business based on the square footage of the lot of the address given. So just a quick run through of how this works. Customer will fill out the form, put their name, email, address, and the services that they need, and how often, monthly, bi-weekly, or a one-time service. And this will go directly and be captured into our Airtable, which I have one in here, hank@trimwood.com, and a street address. He's signing up for lawn mowing for a one-time service. And you'll notice that the lawn quote is now empty, which is what we're hoping to calculate with our code node. So I'll hop back over to N8N, test this workflow to see what relevant data that we're getting. So we can see if we hop over to our Airtable trigger, see we got our customer Hank, we have lawn mowing and a one-time service, and we also got his address. And then the Zillow search grabs that address and returns all the valuable data for that address. And we see that if we scroll down through all the data that it's outputting, we get a lot size here. We'll hop into our code node, delete this. We will scroll down until we get the lot size, bring that over, and this is just to see how the lot size is output. We'll also do the same thing for the Airtable trigger to get the services needed, how often, and those are the only things that we are going to need. So we can copy this, go back to our Claude or ChatGPT project, paste this in, and start giving it a prompt. So I just wrote out this prompt basically saying, write JavaScript code for N8N code node that calculates a lawn mowing service quote, begin by retrieving the lot size for the required services and for the frequency. And basically saying multiply the lot square footage by a base multiplier to get the initial quote. And I'll send this and see how it goes. So you see we have our frequency discounts, lot size, and we'll see how this goes. We'll copy and paste this in here. And we will need to test the workflow. And we see we have a base quote with a frequency multiplier and saying that the adjustment was 100% of the base price, which is correct because Hank only signed up for a one-time service. And so this is such a valuable tool whenever you're able to prompt correctly and have the available context, such as the N8N documentation and how code nodes are supposed to be written, and gives you just a launch pad to be able to iterate and make this thing more robust without having the headache of being stuck in a repetitive cycle of constantly debugging code. So guys, that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some value from it. If you like this content or got any value from it at all, like, subscribe, join the community, which will be linked below. And until then, see you guys.